Hello, I'm Afro Joe. Today I will be talking about my current project, that is to reproduce a game called Luck, Be a Landlord. Luck, Be a Landlord, developed by Trampoline Tales, is a very interesting take on a deck building roguelike. It revolves around using a slot machine to pay rent. Every round you spin the machine, collect money, and then choose a symbol to add to the machine. The symbols have a wide variety of interactions and synergies that add a lot of strategy to the game. I thought that it would be fun to create my own version of the game so that I could have my own synergies and own wacky combos. So here we are in Unity, where I've been creating my version, Chance Be a Homo. So far I've created some of the basic mechanics of spinning the slot machine, collecting the money, and adding symbols to the machine. So first I'm going to click the play button to preview what I've got so far. So when I click play, you'll see it generates this slot machine display, and when I click spin, it shows some symbols, counts up the gold, and then takes us to the shop. In the shop here we can then choose another symbol to add, and that is added to the list of symbols that can appear when I spin again. So if I click spin again, it's going to show some new symbols, count up the money, and then take us to the shop. Rinse and repeat. Okay, so first let's look at the hierarchy, see what we have in our scene. So there's the main camera, and slot machine base is an empty component that has no sprite, that just calls the main slot machine script, which is the main script that handles most of the logic for the game. And there's also the background grid here, which is basically just a place to hold these 20 squares here, which all they are empty sprites with no logic, just part of the background scenery. Then on our canvas, we have our buttons, such as the spin button and the money display, and this shop activator is an empty object which will activate and deactivate the shop whenever the conditions are met. And in the shop we have our 3 buttons and some plain text. Next I'm going to go into the slot machine script and show you what's going on with the game's internal logic and how it spins the wheel and finds the symbols. Okay, so here is the slot machine script, and looking down, I'll first go through what happens when you start the game. So when the scene loads and this start function starts, it assigns a symbol list, which is the empty list of the person's deck. So it's all the symbols which are in the slot machine, and it also sets their money to 0. So here this goes through 1 to 5, so it initially creates 5 symbols, and it takes 20 empty symbols, and then it creates what I've referred to as the grid base objects. So if we look back at Unity, in this grid we have the plain squares, and then on top of those plain squares there are these sprites which are going to show the sprite for the symbols when they're in place. So these are objects which are going to change which sprite they're showing, depending on what the slot machine tells them to show. So the symbol base is this square here. This list here is this list of every symbol which is in the game. This is not the list of symbols that are in the person's deck. When I click play, you'll see that the list of symbols in the person's deck actually gets instantiated onto the scene because it's easier to manage the separate instance of them if they are physically exist. So over here on the left, where we have all these empty clones, this flower, mouse, cheese, apple, sun, these are instantiated copies of the symbol prefabs I have. And this list doesn't matter where it is in the scene because you can't see them, but this list is stored in the scripts in this symbol list. So when you click the spin button, it activates this function, spin, which in turn activates all of these different functions and coroutines, which are different stages of the game. So first, it disables all the symbols. This is so that only the symbols which are displayed are activated, and those are the ones which will trigger any effects or synergies on those ones. So if I look at the display all symbols function, it's very simple. It just looks at every symbol that is in the symbol list and deactivates them. Next, it shuffles the list of symbols, which is, here's a simple shuffle function which I copied from the internet that uses the random number generator in Unity to randomize the list of symbols. Next is the assign symbols to positions. So this will take every symbol in the symbol list and assign it to a grid base object, which is one of these 20 grids that you see here, so that each grid knows which symbol it has and each symbol knows what the grid position is. So first it sets the symbol to active, then it adds it to the internal slot grid symbols, which is this slot machine's way of tracking where the symbol is, and then it assigns it to the grid-based objects using this assign symbol function in symbol display. So this symbol display component is attached to the grid-based objects, which are these squares here, which will display the symbol that it currently has, and each one has a symbol display component. So if we look at the symbol display class, then here what the assign symbol does so this assign symbol function takes in the symbol and extracts the information from that symbol and assigns it to this component's private variables. Then it updates the sprite to display the current symbol that it has. So the symbols that get passed in are various prefabs, as pre-made game objects, which all have this symbol component. So this symbol component primarily contains these public variables which can be edited in the inspector to create these prefab symbols, which can then be accessed by the other scripts. Next, we have the onActivate synergy function. Now this function, all it does is it activates the synergy event. When it sees that, it will activate the synergy, which will vary depending on what the symbol is. So the flower, for example, will look at every adjacent symbol, and then if the symbols have the correct name, then the value will be multiplied by 2. After all the synergies are activated, any that have been marked for destruction are then removed from the symbol list, and then a coroutine is started to display that destruction so that they will blink out one by one instead of all at once. And once finished, only then will it start the second part of spin. The second part of the spin is to do with counting the money once each of the synergies is activated. So the money is first counted internally, going through each of the symbol display bases, which in turn takes its value initially from symbol and then is altered by these synergy components. Each unique value creates a new bucket in this list, or round value list, so that when the values are displayed on the screen, they can be displayed in one bucket at a time. So everything that gives you 1 gold will pop up with the 1 first, then 2, and 5, or whatever values there are. It will display the money next to the symbol for a couple seconds before moving to the next one. And finally it updates the money you see at the very bottom and then activates the shop. When the shop is activated, this panel then hides the slot machine behind it, and you get 3 buttons with choices of symbols which will add them to the symbol list. There are still a couple core mechanics still to be added, primarily targets to reach after a certain number of spins, which if not met, you will lose the game. And also passive items are the other main mechanic from the original game, which I would like to add as well. On top of that, there's also UI improvements, animations, sounds, and lots more symbols to add, as well as duplicate protection for the shop. Now, I think that lots of my code is very messy, in particular with how the slot machine, symbol display, and symbol components interact with each other in terms of who needs access to who and which variables are available. Many of the functions between these 3 scripts refer directly to each other and are dependent on accessing each other's variables to keep track of exactly what's happening in the game at all stages. I hope to be able to look back at this one day and see all of the mistakes that I've been making and see exactly where all the improvements can be made and how. If you guys have any thoughts or any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.